Well, hello there, and welcome back to Fabulous Folklore Presents with me, your host, Icy Sedgwick. This time I'm talking to Najah Lightfoot, the multi-award winning author of Spiritual Magic of Dolls, Good Juju and Powerful Juju, and regular contributor to the Llewellyn Annuals. Najah's magical staff is on display in part of the permanent collection of the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft. She's an in-demand speaker and presenter for conferences, events, and workshops, and Najah lives in Denver, Colorado, where the blue skies and the power of the Rocky Mountains uplift and fill her soul. In this episode, we will talk about her new book, The Spiritual Magic of Dolls, Haunted Dolls, how to know if you're a doll person, and how to start collecting dolls if you're interested in doing so. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to Fabulous Folklore. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Icy. How are you?
I'm not too bad. We are here to talk about this rather lovely book. Can I just say how much I love the doll on the cover? She's
Thank you.
adorable. I think she's so cute. And if anyone
Thank
can't say
you.
properly, there. I think
Thank
she.
you so much. She was really happy to be the cover doll.
I was really pleased when I read the book to discover that she was actually one of yours, and I was like, "Oh yay, that makes it even cooler." Um,
Yeah.
so what prompted you to write a book about dolls in the first place?
Well, it's kind of a thing, I've been writing about magic and magical practices for a really long time. And first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. I mean, this is just it's a wonderful thing, and I really do appreciate it so much. It's great to see you and talk to you for those of you who don't know that we can see each other, but we can. And um, but anyway, so I've been writing articles. I have two previous books published, Good Juju, Powerful Juju. But there was always like this inner thing in me that was like, I have kind of like this little gift that, it'd be pretty cool if I could actually write about it. And then in 2023, I was teaching at some conferences, and I happened to be like on the conference circuit in 2023, 3 years ago. That's crazy. But it was at the conferences, it was kind of like, you teach your workshops, and then they're like, if you want to try something new, you could try something new if you want to. And it had been kind of gnawing at me. And I was like, it'd be really cool if I could share about my dolls. Dolls are magical, they're wonderful, they have such a history. The conferences I was teaching at, they were full of magical people and things like that. So I thought I would try it out. I thought I'd try and see if I could just, get off a pretty low key class about dolls. And it just blew my mind, the reception. Um, it kind of spread like wildfire, like a hidden secret that I was the doll lady at these conferences. People are like, "Are you the doll lady?" And I'm like, yeah. Are you teaching that class on dolls?" And I'm like, yeah." And then they'd either like kind of be freaky, like they would look at me a little freaky, or then they'd be like, "Oh, I can't wait to come to your class." So, long story short, after teaching at several conferences some of the material that I had about dolls, I thought, it would be really great if I could publish this in book form. It would be a really great thing. And so that's how I came to write the book about it.
Cool. Because I think the problem that some people might have is they might think of dolls as being sort of quote unquote creepy, or like think of them in a negative sense, or they might think of something like Barbie, which I guess is a different type of doll. So do you think that many people would be a bit creeped out by dolls because they just don't understand them? Or do you think that people do actually have more of an affection for dolls than they might realize?
I think there's both. I think there's a serious amount of people who are really freaked out about dolls. They're just freaked out about them. They don't want anything to do with them. It's not their thing. And you know what? That's okay with me. Like when I would be at conferences, if the conversation would kind of turn to, "Oh, you're the doll lady. We want to talk to you about doll." And I could see people were visibly uncomfortable. I would just be like, "We can talk about that later. We don't have to talk about that now. It's not my thing to like, impose my doll self, on people and freak people out because I don't like people to do that to me with, I mean, there's lots of scary things that I'm not cool with. So it's like, I don't, we're fine. But then there's also the other camp where there's, lots of people. Barbie is super, I mean, Barbie is iconic. So many people have Barbies. I mean, she has her place cemented in history. So there's a lot of people who just think about Barbies too. Like, okay, Barbie dolls. But then there's the people in the middle who have like heirloom dolls, dolls maybe their grandma passed down to them or their mom or someone gifted to them, or there's collectors. There is a huge collectors you know arena for dolls. In fact, here in Denver in April we have this gigantic doll and toy super show that comes here, and it's just people who are crazy about dolls. So there's all those people in the middle, so it hits, it hits all three of those.
Mm. It's funny because I know a friend of mine who does the How Haunted podcast. He bought a haunted doll on eBay, and he actually ended up not bringing it in the house. That's how freaked out he was. She's since gone to another home.
Oh,
Um,
it's
and
been rehomed.
yeah, and you do talk about haunted dolls in the books. Obviously, I was like, "Oh, this is sort of like the where I come in at them with," and I think obviously listeners would be interested in haunted dolls. Why do people think that dolls are haunted, and who do we think dolls are haunted by?
Well, so dolls, first of all, just by their sheer creation, they're made to look like us. So they look like us in all different stages of life. There's baby dolls and they look like babies. Then there's dolls that have real, like what they call sleeping eyes or glass eyes, so their eyes move up and down. Then there's dolls that have painted eyes, their entire faces are painted, so they can look that way. Then there's dolls that are made to look like, Barbies, who are like grown women, or teenagers, so they look like that. Or there's, dolls who look like older women or boys or baby boys. So dolls mimic human beings. So just by the sheer fact that they mimic us and look like us is freaky. And then, just like any artistic creation, a doll comes into being because the artist decided, hey, this is what I want this doll to look like. And so I want it to look like this type of human being. So I think that that is what makes dolls freaky for a lot of people because they just can't get past, their arms moving or their heads turning around, or I don't know, some of them you can wind them up and they'll walk across the floor. No, and that, I'm sure some people wouldn't be into that. But so, I think that, is, makes dolls freaky just on their own, that they have a presence simply because of the way that they're created. And then some dolls are, lovingly hand created. They're one of a kind, or only so many were made of that particular doll. But then some of them are just made in factories where, there's pieces and parts hanging ready to be put together. And that's kind of a freaky thing if you think about it that way.
Yeah, I've just got mental images of just doll parts hanging somewhere
Right.
now, and I'm just like, oh, that's a mental image I possibly didn't need. Um,
Right, exactly.
so do you think that quote unquote haunted dolls can be rehabilitated, or do they just need the right owner?
Well, yeah, thank you for bringing me back around to that because I kind of got sidetracked in my own mind thinking about how dolls mimic human beings. But we were talking about haunted dolls, which I know a lot of people want to know. So here's my take on haunted dolls. So, one thing that is really special about a doll is that dolls can live or exist for a very long time. Like you can have a doll, it's very easy to find a doll from the 1800s. You can find a doll that's been in existence for generations and families and generations. And so the doll actually can take on the experiences from where the doll has been. So I tend to see it in the light of trauma. So if a doll has been in an environment where it's been traumatic or bad things have happened, I wrote about a piece like, of course, around Halloween, you start seeing all these dolls and they just look so horrible. And, they're in asylums or prisons or they're in a room. Well, in my mind, because of who I am, to me, I see past that and I see, wow, that doll might have been that child's only friend or that person's only friend who went through some really bad stuff and the doll got left behind.
Mhm.
And so now the doll has embodied all of those experiences until somebody comes and picks the doll up, right? So you're like, wow, this doll feels really emotionally heavy, or it feels haunted to me, because it's got this heavy presence to it. Well, sometimes dolls do come from places where bad things have happened, not to the doll, but in the environment.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. That's even more sad in a way.
It is.
Oh. So, one of the things I was quite interested about is if you look at dolls from like an animist perspective, and obviously everything having a spirit of its own, at
Yeah.
what point would a doll get a spirit? Would it be the point that they're assembled? So therefore kind of almost comes like from the creator, or is it when someone first kind of interacts with them and picks them up?
Well, I tend to feel like a doll really gets its spirit when the doll is loved.
Hmm.
You can pick up dolls in a store as many as you want. That doesn't mean that the doll is going to have a spiritual presence. It's still just a doll, but it's waiting for you or whatever. You're drawn to it because,
Hmm.
oh, I like this doll. But I think the moment that you emotionally connect with the doll and the doll is loved, and the doll feels like, oh, I'm going to go home with you or I'm going to be gifted to someone. That to me begins the beginning of the doll having a spirit. And, it can, and a spirit can live on for a long, long time. But it's kind of like, once you love something, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And having an animist view, once you give that love, you can give that love to anything.
Hmm.
It no longer exists as just this inanimate object. It ceases to be inanimate, in my opinion.
That's just taking me off and like, away from what I was going to ask into the idea of, when people have like lucky mascots and things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you sort of think, to what extent is that mascot lucky, and to what extent is it actually doing things?
Right. Or when you connect with it, does it have a relationship with you? Because, you carry it around and it
Mm,
makes you feel good and then you have good luck in quotes, with it. It starts to have a presence. It's a lucky charm. It's a spiritual thing. It's something you work with over time. Dolls have that same ability.
mm. I hope this is starting to change people's minds. If anybody was listening to this and were very like anti-doll, I hope that they're actually starting to go, I hadn't thought of it that way.
I hadn't thought about it. Yes. There.
Um, and obviously, because we talk about haunted dolls, and I know you're a big horror person, and so am I,
Yeah.
and I was glad to see the mention of the Conjuring franchise
Yes,
in
my
there.
favorite movies.
Um, and I must admit, the first one I think is my favorite out of all of
The
them.
mine too. I just always go back to the first one. I've seen all the other ones, but I don't, the first one is the one for me too.
And obviously, because I know you've got this sort of familiarity with dolls, when you look at the original, like quote unquote, real Annabelle compared to the
Mm.
prop in the film, let's be honest, James Wan has a certain look that he likes these figures to have.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
do you think Annabelle would have actually been creepier in the film if she'd been the actual Annabelle doll compared to the model he chose, or do you think he chose the model he did for a reason?
I like to refer to her as the prop
Mm.
Annabelle doll so that we make that distinction
Yeah.
between the real Annabelle doll. I definitely think moviegoers' experiences would have been completely different were they looking at the real Annabelle doll versus the prop Annabelle doll, which is fantastic. I mean, that doll
Mm.
is fantastic. Whoever the prop makers were and James Wan, they knew what they were doing when they created that doll. I mean, she's great. You kind of put her next to the other one, and I mean, it's apples and oranges. It's just not the same. And I will say this because I'm very respectful of the Annabelle doll. So I've done a lot of research around her, and there is a picture of the prop Annabelle doll in my book, but there is not a portrait, I mean a picture of the real Annabelle doll. And the reason why that is that I do not have a relationship with the real Annabelle doll. And I think a lot of times too, based on, like your history and things that you know about, like you do have to have respect. I mean, that's another area that I think is good to talk about with dolls. Like, dolls are very powerful, and the Annabelle doll is very powerful. And
Mm,
I have a huge respect for Elizabeth Warren. I just think that, had I been able to meet them, we would have been friends. And they were so good at what they did because they did have respect for what they were trying to help people with.
mhm.
And so I try to put those parameters around Annabelle
Yeah.
because to me she deserves that respect.
Hmm.
Whereas the prop Annabelle doll is a movie prop.
Hmm.
But she also has a presence because
Yes.
she's been in those films. I'm sure if you went to a Comic Con or whatever and she's sitting on the stage, you probably step back a few feet.
I just had a really weird vision of like a load of people turning up in cosplay dressed as Annabelle, and I was like,
Right. I
that'd be
mean,
quite easy.
I've never seen that. Why is that? You think that would be a thing?
You'd
Like a
think
group of Annabelle dolls, prop Annabelle dolls.
that would be quite a sight, that I think.
That would be quite a sight. It would. Yeah.
So bearing in mind that idea about images, the other one that springs to mind, is it Robert the doll, where you have to ask his permission before you're allowed to take a photograph? Have you come across that
Okay.
one?
Yeah, I only know enough about Robert the doll to like give him his own lane. He's not in my book. Again, he lives in his own lane. I'm very sensitive to dolls. So, and who they may experience life through and as. So, I can't really discuss him at length
Hmm.
because for me, he just stays in his own lane, which is good for me.
Yeah, fair enough. The other one I did want to talk about, it's not, I suppose they're dolls of a sort. Ventriloquist dummies that
Oh,
terrify me.
yeah.
Have you honestly? There's just some. I think it's. Oh yeah, I don't know what it is about them. Like if they're um sort of a different form, like when you see people doing ventriloquism, like with bears and stuff, I'm fine with that. It's just the minute you have the human shaped dummy, it just freaks me out.
Yeah.
It, so I was wondering, have you seen James Wan's earlier film Dead Silence, where you've got an entire wall of like 50 ventriloquist dummies near the end?
I haven't seen that, but I have seen like the old Outer Limits
Mm,
shows with the ventriloquist dummy doll and everything. And I don't have any ventriloquist dolls, but I do like them.
mm,
I think they're very different though than
yeah.
from a doll like what we're talking about in terms of like, a heirloom doll or a baby doll or an antique doll because they're manipulated with
Mm,
human hands, to speak and have a presence and all that kind of stuff. So I think they fall into their own category because you do manipulate,
mm,
their mouths and stuff like that. And they're more of an extension
mhm.
of a human being to act in a certain way because they are basically a puppet.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And obviously, the other dolls that came to mind were from Toy Story, the first one, and they're the ones
Mhm.
where Sid kind of takes them to bits and then puts them back together with like wrong heads and things like that. And obviously, Woody thinks that they're going to hurt him because of how they look. Obviously, there's a moral there. But then obviously they all end up friends and they're all lovely at the end. So. And because I've got a fascination with, those transformation videos where people take like Barbie and then wipe the face off and then draw a new one on and turn them into like different characters from films and stuff. They're absolutely stunning works of art, some of the things that people do with those. So what happens when a doll's modified? Obviously, I would imagine if it's transformed in a nice way, that, but I'm
Instead of
thinking,
a bad one.
yeah, the Sid one's not so nice.
Well, now, the Toy Story movie, it's been so long since I've seen that. I'm trying to even like put that scene in my mind with the dolls, and I can't really get it up there. And then the wiping of the doll's face and turning it into another doll and as an artist creation, I think that's pretty cool. I mean, I think that a doll can definitely be changed. I mean, you can change a doll just by changing the doll's clothes, or what the doll's wearing. Um, or one of my dolls that recently came to me, bless her sweetheart, I did find her at the toy and doll super show. And when I found her, she was absolutely bald and naked, lying on a table. Poor thing. I mean, she had like patches missing from
Oh.
her head. I mean, she just looked like she'd been through hell, and my heart just immediately went out to her. I was like, oh my God, what? What is going on with you? So I brought her home and I put a wig on her. I gave her hair and I gave her clothes. And now she's completely different and she's very happy.
Mm,
So I think it's fine to take your doll and transform them and take them. Dolls like to be a part of our lives.
mhm,
So if you're the kind of person that, that's something that you can do with your dolls, transform them, bring them into the future, make them feel like they're having, part of a new life that makes them happy.
mm. Yeah, there was a woman on Bargain Hunt of all things not so long ago, and she had this huge collection where she'd customized possibly Barbie dolls, and she'd put them in like historically accurate outfits, but also done their
Oh,
hair as well. So she'd obviously been curling their hair and things like that. And the dolls were beautiful, but because they were then part of a collection that I think people might have been able to go and see, um, you know, because of the historical reenactment side of it, I think, people obviously
yeah,
were reacting to them really positively because they were really cool and the amount of work that had gone into them. Um,
absolutely.
so I suppose that will be a bit different from like when Sid takes the head off a doll and then puts like spider legs on the bottom of it and things like that. And it's just, yeah.
Well, to each his own,
Yeah.
I suppose. Who am I to say that's what you want to do?
Seriously though,
You,
some of the transformation ones are really, really cool.
yeah.
And as I say, I quite like watching them. It's when they also like modify the bodies as well. So someone did like an anatomically correct as much as you can be one of Ursula from The Little Mermaid, and like you built the body out and things
Oh.
like that, and obviously recolored it, and she looked amazing.
I'm sure she must have looked amazing. I haven't seen them personally, but I will go check that out. Thank you for pointing that out to me.
I have my uses for random things on the internet.
But that's the cool thing about dolls. They can be transformed, you know, into some things that others might think are weird and strange. But then, also into these, like you're saying, these reenactments and like they said, like I said, dolls are made to be enjoyed and loved, and they like that.
Mm. Speaking of modifications, obviously you mentioned the repair shop in the book, which obviously you've been like a big fond
Yes.
of. I love
Oh
the
my
repair shop.
gosh, I love that show. Oh,
You just watch it and you're just like, this is like watching true craftspeople and magicians at
oh.
work.
Oh, I know. Like, who are these people? Please let them keep teaching, others to do what they do because they do amazing. I mean, they save things that you just would like, who would, think like, oh, this is special or it can never be repaired and have a new life and just, oh, the heartfelt tears and stuff that come from watching that show. I love it.
I mean, there have been some really amazing sort of repairs and transformations of both dolls and teddies, and the things that always fascinate me
Hmm.
about them in particular is they almost look relieved that they've been fixed
Yeah.
afterwards. And I always just think, yeah, how long have you been sitting there with like one ear hanging off? And because obviously some people bring things in and it's like, oh, it's a treasured heirloom, but we've been keeping it in an outhouse in the garden and it got wet, and it's like, how treasured was it? Whereas I think with the dolls and teddies, people are like, we didn't know where to go. Uh,
Yeah.
and this is the thing when you mentioned Dolls Hospital, my mum was saying there was one near where she lived growing up, and now I've no idea where you would take them.
I know we have a doll hospital here in Denver that's been closed for a while, and it's sad because the repair of a doll is a very specialized art, and I think, having people that you can take your dolls to be repaired, unless you can do that yourself is a really nice thing to do, and to have people who know how to do that, I think is wonderful.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I suppose it's not, I guess teddies you can probably fudge a little bit, but I suppose obviously with the material some dolls are made from, that's
Right.
going to be quite hard to, I don't think you can learn how to do that from a YouTube video, can you?
I don't know. You can learn a lot on YouTube, but like you said, like, some dolls, because of what they're made from, you wouldn't want to get that doll's body wet. Or how to reattach a wig to a doll properly. Or if the eyes slip out. Oh, that probably just creeped a lot of people. What's wrong with their eyes? It's slipping.
Oh,
Well, you have to reattach it from behind, and put it back in there correctly. I mean, I don't think that's a skill a lot of people have, and so sometimes our dolls just sit in different states because we don't know how to fix them. That doesn't mean we don't love them, we just don't have that kind of skill.
mm.
So I have definitely, taken one of my dolls to a doll hospital before, and they did such a good job. Her head had been, her head had become, what's the word? Unattached from her body. She was missing her head
Oh,
for a long time, for years. And I kept her in a shoebox. I had her head in one part and her body in the other. And one day I did take her to the doll hospital and they reattached her head and she was very happy. She looks
I'm
great.
not surprised.
They put clothes on her. It was good. It was good. It was a good thing to have her head put back on.
I know my mum, when I was telling her I was talking to you, she mentioned her doll, Angela, that she had, and I think she might have a china body, but she's all held together inside with elastic bands.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you know how elastic bands periodically will just like perish and snap?
Yeah.
So my mum tells the story that Angela was sitting on the settee and then all of a sudden there was a ping and all of her limbs and her head just fell off.
Oh,
So obviously she found this quite traumatizing. My
oh,
grandfather apparently thought it was quite funny and then more or less had to string her back together again. But I just this mental image
oh.
of this doll just going,
Yeah, just all of a sudden, and all her limbs just go flying.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be traumatizing for your mom because she's like, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do now?" Now I have a doll like that. She's very old. She's a little black doll that I have, and I found her in a secondhand store. And I mean, she's barely holding together. She has pins
Mm.
coming out where her shoulders would be, and she's very tiny. One of her arms are just kind of hanging off. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I hope your arm doesn't really come off because I don't know what we're gonna do. Luckily, I have met a new lady here. Well, actually, I met her a long time ago, and I thought her doll shop had closed, but she reopened. And when I was writing the book, I found her again. So I'm so happy. So now, if anything happens to my little doll with her pin shoulders, I could take her down there and she could probably help me out.
Mm.
Because she also has a woman in the back who makes all the doll clothes that you can buy for your dolls. And so it's just wonderful. So now I have this little spot where I can take my dolls if something happens to them.
That's cool. I think one of the things as well was a lot of the dolls in the book, I think, in the pictures that you include look like sort of baby dolls and antique dolls and things. And it then got me thinking that we've got in Northumberland, there's a stately home, and I'll send you some of the pictures because I think you'll quite like them of dolls' houses, and these are
Oh,
huge dolls' houses. But the
yeah.
house itself, it how do I put it? A lot of the rooms look more like crime scenes with the way the wallpaper's coming off and things like that. But
Ah.
they've all got obviously figures in them. So what do you make of those kind of dolls compared to like a baby doll? And could you use like dolls' houses themselves in a magical sense?
You mean like the dolls in the doll houses are like tiny stick figures or something?
Yeah, they're only about yay big and they're sort of just like tiny
Oh,
little
like they
heads and
fit like in the
mm,
beds and in the rooms and stuff like that. Okay, well, to me, those dolls belong with that house
hmm
because they can't really exist outside of that doll's house.
hmm
If you were to take them out, they wouldn't have a place in the world. So the doll's house and the dolls that are in them, they're a unit. They're a family.
hmm
So and also that's very magical because I also feel like doll houses are portals. So if you wanted to do like magical work with your doll, maybe that room could be a room that takes you to another room. Maybe you can use it in a meditation. You could or that room reminds you of someplace nice, in a meditation. You could take the dolls out. You could go into that room. Um, I think that doll houses have just unlimited potentials. But I do think the dolls that are created to go in the dollhouse belong with the dollhouse.
hmm
I think they'd be lost if you took them out of there. Then they'd be like, where's my bed?
mm,
Where's my room that I've been in all this time?
yeah. Whereas I
And
suppose obviously other dolls are meant to be in your room.
yeah, and then like you said, the wallpaper, they look like crime scenes. Well, maybe someone with a loving heart might want to, fix the wallpaper, give it some paint. Unless, ooh, and this just got to a whole, oh man, my mind just went to a whole nother tangent, Icy.
Like,
Unless you're using, oh, people are going to really freak out about this. You're using the dollhouse to recreate a crime scene and you need information. It's totally possible. I could see that.
mm,
I could see being like a forensic whatever person and using a dollhouse and the doll's there to recreate a crime scene, maybe unsolved crime or cold cases or something like that. Because again, dolls mimic human beings.
hmm
A dollhouse mimics a real house, right? So your dolls could actually have that kind of job.
yeah.
Aren't you glad you talked to me today?
Well, it was funny because when you started talking about using them to solve crimes, my brain for some reason went to like Barbie's dream house, and I'm like, why?
But you're the one that said they look like crime. The wall. I mean, it's possible.
When you see the photos, you'll see what I mean. They're very weird. I think it's just because they're obviously a bit dilapidated and they're all like inside
Yeah.
massive cases, so they're obviously quite difficult to get to. Um,
Yeah.
but I never had any dolls' houses. Um,
I don't either.
I played with my brother's Transformers.
Okay. Yeah, those are fun. It's crazy. I don't own any doll houses. Isn't that wild? And I don't really know why. That's a strange thing. I haven't really ever given it much thought. I think
Mm,
they're wonderful, but I don't own any doll houses either.
maybe that's a hint to get one.
I don't know. I have so much stuff. I'm not sure. I don't know. It would be like, oh no, 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 please. Like, there's no room.
Oh, I think it is quite funny though how when you start thinking about something, you go, "Hang on, but why haven't I got any of that?" I'm like, when I
I
said to you at the beginning,
know.
I don't have any dolls, and then while we've been talking, I've actually thought of two.
Right, exactly. Now you know. See, and this is how we know you really are a doll person because you knew exactly where they were, how long they've been there, and that one has a job.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, God in my books. There's a lot of them
Exactly.
to God.
Yeah.
Oh, I think she'll probably quite enjoy being a librarian, to be fair. I would. And obviously I mentioned my mum's doll, Angela, the one that like
Yeah.
exploded. She's fine. Obviously she got fixed and everything. Um, and I was always allowed to play with her. It was never like, oh, she's delicate or anything, because my mum knew I would look after her. So I used to sort of change her outfits and things. But it never really felt like right to play with her. Whereas I
Mm-hmm.
had my own doll, Sarah, who was one of the ones where they've got like a soft body and then like the hard arms and legs, like
Oh,
those
yeah,
ones.
yeah. Okay, I can see that. Uh-huh.
So, so she was obviously a bit more cuddly. as a result. But do you think, obviously, if I'm like, that's not my doll, but that one is my doll, do you think that there's therefore a right doll out there for like literally everyone?
Well, I think that you get attached to dolls and dolls get attached to their person. But like a person like me, I have several dolls. So I can't just say I have one right doll because I have a family of dolls. I have lots of dolls. So they're not just one right one. But I do think people like have relationships with their dolls. And I think, a doll can feel like, oh, more like, oh, this, I feel more right with this doll than I do with the other doll. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean you might not go around the corner and, oh, look at this doll. I like this one too. This one can come home. So I think, you can have lots of right dolls who fit with you. And, that doll too, Angela, she obviously was very attached to your mom, and your mom was very attached to her. And you also knew that,
Mm,
as a kid. So that might have been like a little piece of it as well. Well, this is my mom's doll.
mm,
So, and whereas Sarah is my doll. And
mm.
sometimes, I do have a great story about a woman I met at a conference. It was kind of freaky, and I felt for her because she had bought a doll for her daughter. And for years, she had been trying to get her daughter to love and play with the doll, and her daughter just didn't want anything to do with it, and she was very upset because sometimes when people do go out to invest in a doll or buy a doll for someone, they put a lot of time into that. It's a big purchase. And so she was kind of, sad that her daughter and the doll never connected. And then as I listened to her and she went into great detail about the doll and everything, I had to share with her that the doll was actually her doll. It didn't belong to her.
How did you take that news?
She she actually didn't take it too well. Like, well, she's actually, it's actually your doll and she's been waiting for you. It was kind of one of those things again. She knew exactly where the doll was, how long she'd been there, the last time she'd seen her, the whole thing. Because dolls will take up that type of space in your mind, and in your heart. And so, I mean, I don't know what actually became of her with her doll, but I think that it did kind of like shed a light, like, don't feel bad that your daughter doesn't want to have anything to do with this doll because the doll actually, that's your doll,
Hmm.
not your daughter's doll. So hopefully it worked out okay. I hope so.
I've just got visions of there being some kind of like, like problem page or agony aunt column somewhere, and people just write to you with doll questions.
I hope so. I would love that. I'm actually hoping that it goes that way. I think that I can help a lot of people with their dolls. I think there's a lot of people who don't know what to do with them, and I've seen it in person. They're not really sure what to do with them or how to move it on or what not to do with it or they just have questions. Or there's a lot of times too that people want to talk to people about their dolls and they don't know who to talk to. So they can talk
Hmm.
to me.
Cool. I'll let people leave comments in below on YouTube then, if they've got any questions for you about dolls. Um, yeah, that'd be really cool though, actually.
Yeah.
And one of the things I noticed as well that you talk about a little bit about the different history of dolls as well, and how obviously some dolls are actually worth quite a lot of money, and some of them have quite a long heritage in terms of like the company that they come from and so on.
Yeah.
So if people wanted to invest in a doll or actually just start collecting them, do you think they'd be better off hopping onto eBay or actually looking for dolls in person?
Hmm. I think you could do both. If you buy a doll in person, you get to see the doll and actually look at it. Now, dolls do have markings. There are some really great collectors books out there where if you're looking for a doll to invest in, first thing people do is look for a mark. And normally a doll has a mark on the back of their neck that will tell you where the doll was made or when it was made. Like the doll on my cover, she's a Shindana doll, and she actually has that stamped on the back of her neck and the date she was created, which was in 1969. And
Mm.
that's what collectors will look for. They want to see like a stamp on the doll. So if you were going to purchase a doll on eBay, I think that you're just totally looking for as a collector's item. I would want to see a picture of the mark on the doll. So I know that you're just not like telling me, oh, this is a collectible or this is a vintage doll, because vintage can just mean age.
Mm.
But I want to see a mark. I want to see a mark on the doll. I want to see a picture of the mark on the doll.
Yeah. That just put me in mind as well when you say collectibles. You know when people buy collectibles and don't take them out of the box? Do you think
Yeah.
a doll that's never taken out of their box and played with, but they're collected so they're valued because they're going to be worth something, are they going to be quite sad, do you think?
Well, I have a doll my husband gave me for my birthday. No, Christmas? Yeah, it was Christmas. And I think she'd been in her box a long time. And it takes a while to acclimate a doll that's been in a box for a long time. Now, it depends too. A lot of people don't have that kind of emotional connection if they're just like, some people just collect things in boxes to move on. I mean, eBay's full of that, all kinds of things. But, if you do get a doll that's been in a box for a long time and you take her out of the box and she is a collectible doll, you are going to have to spend some time with the doll because she's basically been in a box for years. And so, it's just like when I like to tell when you like rescue a pet, you got to give them some time, you know. And I can tell that she's changing. Her skin's getting a little bit softer, even though she's all plastic. But she's starting to get that, she's losing that hardness to
Mm.
her from just sitting on a shelf in a box for years and years and years. Hmm.
Mm. So if people are already going, I have a doll already and I want to get to know it better, where should they start?
I would say that you should just probably want to start by spending some time with your doll, one on one. Just sit with her or him and talk to him or him or her or your doll, and just like really like sit with them for a while. And the more that you do that, and I mean like on a daily basis too. I mean, I am a doll person, so I I talk to my dolls on a daily basis. I say hello to them, good morning, good night, because they do have a presence and they do return that affection. It's a wonder how you can look at your doll and your doll will just be smiling and it makes you feel good. Well, it's because you smiled at it. A doll is created to be loved and be part of a family or a life or a person's life. So just start spending some time with it like you would. And um, I will share, it's kind of no big secret, but because I did post it on my Instagram, but I have recently come through some pretty intense medical issues and I was hospitalized for a while and I took one of my dolls with me to the hospital and everybody loved her. Not just me, but also the staff who would come in and talk to her and she became a comfort doll.
Mm.
And I was like, why not? She's a comfort to me in my home where I see her every day. So I'm gonna take her to the hospital with me. And then the staff would come in and they wanted to talk to her. She was just having her best life in the hospital room. It was great. And hospital hours can be really long, especially in the middle of the night, and people get sick. And I got to thinking while I was hospitalized, I had a therapy dog come to see me. And it was just really meant a lot to me in my recovery. But I also started thinking like, dolls are comfort items as well. And
Mm.
my doll was certainly a comfort to me.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's good to know. Not that you're in hospital, but that your doll was
Yeah.
comforting.
Yeah. Yeah. And she just elicited so many conversations from other people who wanted to talk to her or ask me about her. And I thought it was really great.
Mm. I like that. I like the idea of there being a therapy doll.
Yes, a therapy doll. Dolls also like to have jobs. She can be a therapy doll. Exactly. So if you want to get to know your doll better, just spend some time with them.
Hmm.
Like actually pick them up, hold them, talk to them, or say good morning to them, or say good night to them so that, you're building a relationship with your doll.
Hmm. By comparison, what would you do if for some reason you felt you needed to part company with the doll? Because you don't want to just dump it somewhere, because that's mean, as far as I'm concerned. So, like, I would feel bad about doing that. I mean, if I knock one of my sort of figures over, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm sorry. So, um, how would you rehome one then if you were sort of parting company with them rather than having a new one come into your house?
Well, I try to find, someone to give her to, a good home, like I would if I was, rehoming, a family pet. I try to do that. Um, I try to move her on somewhere that I felt was a good spot for her. Also sometimes people put dolls in their wills if they're going to pass away. You can make the doll part of your estate. You can say, I want this doll to move on to this family member. And that way you're caring for your doll in perpetuity or after death, which I think is a very kind thing to do because there are a lot of people who do collect dolls and they don't know what to do with them. So you could, pass them on. Maybe you could, donate them to a children's museum or something like that would be kind. Or, you could do something like that. Now, sometimes people have dolls and they think they're scary and they don't really want to pass them on, but they don't really want to keep them either. So I think it's fair to talk about that too, because there are dolls out there like that. And I've had people ask me that question actually. What do I do with this scary doll? I don't want to, she's freaking me out. So I don't really want to give her to somebody else because I
Mm,
think they might be freaked out. So my personal opinion in that is that you should give the doll a burial
mm,
and just return the doll lovingly back to the earth. Everything comes from the earth, including us. And that's where we're all going. Nobody, unless you're shooting off into space, we're all going back into the ground. So if you have a doll that you really like, don't feel that you can keep, but you also really don't want to give the doll to anybody else, I would suggest giving the doll a proper burial and just, lovingly return her to the earth. And in time, the earth will absorb the doll and you can feel good about that.
mm. That's quite sad, that the idea of a doll funeral.
Yeah, well, there are people out there who inherit dolls or they have dolls and they just, they know the doll's not for them, but also feel they don't really want to give the doll to other people. They may feel something untoward with the doll or whatever. So I would just give the doll a burial.
Mm. Have you ever come across a case where there's legitimately been something negative about the doll, or is it just people's perceptions of the doll?
I don't know. Legitimately? I mean, you're talking about spirit and presence. So I think like you have to respect your feelings in the presence of something that feels untoward to you.
Hmm.
If you're in the presence of a doll that makes you feel creepy, you should probably honor that. By the same token, that same doll might not be scary to somebody else.
Mm,
Now, and also some dolls are created to be scary and
mm,
they're really not. But like I do have a doll that was created to be very scary. She's a very scary looking doll. But I got her at an oddity show. And so I met the people who created her, and it was a mom and daughter duel.
mm.
And they're the ones who made the doll. And they made her to be scary that way. So I knew that that's just the way she looked.
Yeah.
But because she had sat out at this oddity show and many people had passed her by, they too had like projected their own feelings onto her because she's really freaky looking. So when I brought her home, we had to have some, comforting time and things like that because she'd been through a lot. And she does, people do freak out when they see her. but I know her history. I know
Mm.
that's just the way she was made.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose I would imagine she was probably made with love by those creators as well.
It was like when you saw her with the mom and the daughter, you're like, she kind of like lost all of that. But if you just saw her sitting on the table, you're like, whoa, you're a little intense. What is up with
I'm
that?
sure people have probably said that about me as well, so I'm
Yeah,
team
like,
doll on this
whoa,
one.
oh, we're back to our resting thing. Whoa.
Exactly, yeah.
No,
So
really, I'm actually very nice and funny. But if you put me in this setting, you're gonna think something different, right?
yeah, so that's what I'm saying, completely empathize with the
Yeah,
doll on that one.
I can empathize with the doll, right? See, look at you, all this compassion.
Oh, I must admit, the last thing I'll ask is I did an episode a couple of weeks ago, and you know the troll dolls.
Yes,
Where do you stand on those? Because people either love them or hate them.
I have a Santa troll that I
Oh, cool.
got years ago, and I put him on every Christmas. I love him. I think he's the cutest little doll ever. He's a troll doll, but he's a troll doll. That's what
Mm.
he is. He has its own little troll world that he lives in.
I imagine a Santa troll would be like the jolliest thing ever.
Right. Yeah, and there's all those trolls that they're kind of making a resurgence
Mm.
now, the troll dolls are. Yeah, yeah. But I think too that's what they're created to be,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah,
I don't think they're ever going to move out from their troll world, but you can take them in their troll world. That's hard for me to say. And then have fun times with them. Yeah.
cool. Well, I hope that this has convinced anyone who, like me, was kind of sitting on the fence and was like, do I like dolls or not? But it turns out apparently, yes, I do. And I think if anyone else isn't sure, I do really recommend your book as well, because obviously you talk about lots of other films in particular that have dolls in them and things like that. And the history of the dolls was really interesting. And I think if anyone's been to I can't remember what it's called now. It was the Museum of Childhood in London that the V&A run. They've got tons of dolls.
Oh, really?
So if
They're
you ever come back,
everywhere.
mm.
Wow. Well, I had such a great time. Thank you so much, Icy. I hope we get to talk again.
Well, that's the other
Like,
question. What are you working on? Are you working on anything else at the minute, or are you still just riding high on this
I'm
particular?
kind of riding high on my dolls. We're kind of hanging out for a while. So this is really fun to get to talk to you about it, and hopefully I get to, talk to other people about their dolls and help them because I really do, it's kind of a gift of mine to help people with their dolls, whether they need to be rehomed or how to take care of them or be closer to them or if you feel the doll is haunted, what is that really all about? Or like you said too, like the history of dolls in popular culture, especially through film,
Mm,
which I know is something close to your heart. Like, there's a reason why a lot of us are freaked out about.
yeah, it's the clown doll in Poltergeist for me. That's the one I'm just.
Oh, I love that one. That's one of my favorite movies.
Well, the funny thing was when I saw the remake, and this kid just opens a door, and there's not just one clown doll. There's a room full of clown dolls,
Oh,
and I was like, I'm
why
out.
haven't I seen? Well, and I have that weird thing too. I don't have a fear of clowns. Isn't that weird?
You love that
Clowns.
then?
I I don't know why, but that's not saying there aren't other things that just freak me the hell out as well. Like we don't need to talk about those. But I didn't get the clown thing. Yeah, I know that clown doll is something.
It's iconic, is what if I was being polite, is what I would call it. Iconic.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah,
We'll go
for
with that.
sure. Yeah.
Well, it's been absolutely lovely chatting to you, and I'm going to go and
Oh,
say hi to my dolls now.
okay. All right. It was nice talking to you too, Icy. Have a great rest of your night.
Cheerio.
Okay.
Well, thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, feel free to leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts because that helps other people find the show too. It also takes between 4 and 6 hours to research, write, record, and edit these episodes, So if you want to help support my time in doing that, then you can buy me a coffee, or you can join the Fabulous Folklore family on Patreon and enjoy extra benefits, including exclusive episodes and articles and even illustrated talks. All the links you need are below, and thanks in advance.